Well, legendary producer Don Mischer, 15-time Emmy Award winner. We see some of those right behind you there on the shelf. I want to talk about this project that you've got on the Emmy ballot this year, but what do you recall about your first Emmy win?
Well, first of all, you when you're starting your career, you go through this process of saying, God, it would be great to be nominated, just be nominated for an Emmy. And when it happens to you, it's you really feel good, because those of us in this business, we work very hard, and what the difference in getting Emmy recognition, whether it's a nomination or a win, is that it comes from your peers. And so it really means a lot that the people you're competing with have selected you for this honor. My first Emmy win was a long time ago. I think it was in 1981. It was just a joyous, wonderful experience. You know, those of us who grew up in television and have made television our career, when I was a kid, and I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, when I was in junior high school, I dreamed about being a network camera operator. And I dreamed about having a shot someday on my camera that would be seen coast to coast in the United States. And that was really my ambition. And I took a lot of diversions, but ended up actually in television. And so the first Emmy win was very significant to me, and I will always remember it. And I got my Emmy from Dinah Shore and Ella Fitzgerald. And Ella Fitzgerald had trouble pronouncing my name, and Dinah Shore took the envelope and read it. And it was, I always remember how that felt.
That was for Kennedy Center?
Yes, it was for the Kennedy Center honors. Yeah, correct.
That is one of my favorite specials every year. From the moment they announce who's getting honorees over in late summer all the way up through December, I'm just so excited about that show. What's a favorite memory for you working on that show?
Oh, there were so many. And I did the show at first as a director, and then with George Stevens Jr., I produced it with him for, if you add both of those together, for like 22, 23 years. It was just so wonderful to be able to honor, classical musicians, ballet artists, the broad range, playwrights, and to honor those people that had really made a significant difference in our culture. I mean, I remember so many things. I remember Carol Burnett, paying tribute to Jimmy Stewart. I remember when we honored Bob Hope, which was like in the 1980s. We had retired military people come in from all the islands. We were on all the islands in World War II in the Pacific, and each one came out on stage and told about how he felt when Bob visited them, and the bullets were flying overhead and all that. It's full of wonderful, wonderful memories. I remember Jessica Norman singing "Amazing Grace" to Sidney Poitier, which was his, most favorite song. And we always tried to find those emotional moments that would be most meaningful to the honorees. And most of the time we were successful. It was a great show, very proud to have been involved in it. And George Stevens and Nick Vanoff, who really created that show in the beginning, none of us expected it would go on for close to 40 years now and become such a staple in American viewing habits. So very proud to be involved in it.
I love that. I've got most of them on DVD and go back and watch some of my favorite segments quite often.
Yeah, I was a lot of those. I remember the year we honored Johnny Carson and marching the University of Nebraska band, onto the stage, and his reaction. When you're directing them, it's fun because you get to see the reaction of the president and you get to see the reaction of the honoree as everything is happening. And a lot of my pleasure came from seeing them react to these surprises that we kind of laid out for them. You know, it felt good when we really, when we hit the right note and had the right tone to their tributes.
Well, speaking of Washington and the president, the special, the jazz special that you're on the Emmy ballot for this year involves the president and the first lady. And I'm wondering, you know, you've dealt with the White House quite often. Is that an easy thing to do, or is it difficult?
It varies from time to time, to be honest. I mean, there have been times, and then we've dealt with the White House from Jimmy Carter through Reagan, Bush, President Clinton, and W. Bush, and of course President Obama. And generally, it's a very pleasant professional experience. You know, it kind of depends on how things are going for the administration. Often, if there's tense times or scheduling difficulties or whatever, it can get a little bit, you know, pressured. But generally, it works very, very well. The jazz show was just a great event. First of all, because POTUS and FLOTUS, as we say, really enjoyed it. As I directed that show, you know, as well as producing it with my producing partners, Charlie Hakel and Julianne Hare. But watching them on the monitors, they really had a good time. Working with their staff was an absolute delight. And it was great to see a president embrace the art form of jazz and basically, you know, open it up and do it as positively as this White House did. Herbie Hancock and Tom Carter. Tom Carter's head of the Thelonious Monk Jazz Institute, and Herbie Hancock, who was a friend of the president, they were both very instrumental in encouraging the White House to be a part of this. We asked for things at the White House that had never been asked for before. We asked for 3 particular jazz numbers to be performed inside the White House. So in addition to a big tent out on the South Lawn, we actually could go into the White House. We went into the dining hall, which used to be Thomas Jefferson's office. We went into the foyer. We went into the Blue Room, where the president generally greets heads of state. And they allowed us to shoot different artists in those environments. We were also able to put a camera outside of the tent that we had constructed on the South Lawn of the White House that allowed us to visually connect the White House itself to the tent in the backyard. So we had a 30-foot long jib arm which could pull off of the tent and pan over and go into the White House. So we were constantly connecting the White House to the tent that was on the South Lawn. And the tent on the South Lawn, we put a clear plastic backdrop on it. And the first 60 feet of the tent that were actually over the stage and over the audience was also clear plastic. So we were able to actually see the White House behind all the jazz performances. And that was real cool. And it was just it was a great feeling show, a lot of fun and a lot of wonderful artists.
When you come upon an idea like that, whether it's, you know, this program or all the different programs you've done over the years, what's it like as the main producer when you know you got something unique?
Well, you'll have an idea, but you never know whether it's going to get done. When you're dealing with the White House and with all the elements that come with the president, and you know, take the Secret Service for example, you know, you have plans about what you want to do. But you never know whether they're going to approve them. And having done Olympic ceremonies where the Secret Service plays a real important part in the head of state attending, and there's other heads of state there, you learn quickly that all of this stuff has got to be checked out ahead of time. For instance, on the jazz show, the president and Mrs. Obama were seated in the front row, but I wanted to have, because I was directing, a Steadicam, a guy with a camera on the Steadicam rig, to be able to pass in front of him. Now, if I were directing the Oscars, which I've done 3 times, or other shows like that, there's never an issue about a Steadicam moving in front of someone. But when you're talking about the President of the United States and taking a camera and sliding it across right in front of him, and he's not pointed at him, the camera's actually pointed up at the stage, you know, that has to be discussed ahead of time. And we spent weeks working this out with the Secret Service and with the presidential staff to make sure that they were okay with it. Had we just tried that without doing that, our camera operator probably would have been tackled by, you know, a Secret Service agent at some point. The same with the clear plastic tent. You know, we explained to them that we wanted to have a visual relationship between the White House and the event itself and the clear plastic tent, which was set up on the South Lawn. But no one had ever put a camera outside of a tent on the South Lawn that was free to move back and forth between the White House itself and the inside of the tent. We spent weeks working that out. And everything that's connected with an event like that is certainly more complicated and takes more effort in working it out. Take rehearsals, for example. We learned when we started to make our schedule that the first family likes to go to bed rather early, okay? And so we were told that we could not continue work outside past 9:30 p.m. Now, this was just last couple of weeks ago that we did this show. The sun sets at 8 p.m. The sun was setting at 8 p.m., 7:59, the night that we actually did the show. So when you're doing that, you need to rehearse your lighting and your camera shots and all that in actual lighting conditions. But we didn't have the opportunity to do that. Normally, we would have worked inside that tent until 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning. That would be a normal show done at night with a tent. And you work and you don't really start working till the sun is almost down, so you can check the lighting and all of that. We had to plan all that out ahead of time. We had to do most of this in daylight and kind of finesse the fact that we were not going to get much rehearsal at night. So we were out of there by 9:30 every night, knowing that that's what the first family and the staff felt was necessary. And we, you know, we compromise and we cooperate, and the mood was good and the relationships were very good.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, you've produced the Emmys the past couple of years, Andy Samberg last year, Seth Meyers the year before. You talked about working on Oscars and Kennedy Center and all. What goes into a good host? How do you know when you've got a good one on your hands?
You want a host, first and foremost, you want a host that really wants to be there. You want a host that feels comfortable there. Several times, hosts have been booked that kind of had to have their arms twisted, and you know, viewers can pick up on that immediately. So you want someone who really enjoys being there. You want someone who's funny. You know, on the Emmy Awards, there are 26 awards given out and basically 2 hours and 6 minutes of program time. And you kind of sink or swim with your host. You need someone who can roll with the punches, someone who can respond quickly to things that happen. These shows sometimes when you're on the air take on their own life, you know, and go in different directions that you never really planned. So it's quick on your feet, smart, funny, likable, good attitude, and can keep the show moving. I mean, that's what you want. We've been fortunate to have, you know, many great hosts, and I know among them is Jimmy Kimmel, and I know that Jimmy's doing it again this year. It's been announced already, and you know, he's going to make a great host. He knows how to do this.
How early on do you know as the producer, okay, we've got this right, or uh-oh, we've got a little trouble here?
The main trouble, you're talking about when you're on the air?
No. When you've hired the host, you start working with them. How
Oh,
early on
I see what
do you know internally that you've got, either a success or a problem?
the toughest thing, the toughest thing about hosts and what you have to deal with them is that comics are very protective of their material. And, I've worked with comics who hold on to their material until the last possible moment because they're afraid things are going to leak. They're afraid somebody's going to rip them off. They want the element of surprise in the comedy. And the toughest thing with that approach, and I completely understand why it makes sense, is that the network people, the executives, they have a tough time with it. They are used to reading scripts weeks in advance. And one of the hardest things with hosts is trying to help the network executives understand that Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel and Seth Meyers and Neil Patrick Harris, none of these guys, they're not going to have a script ready 3 weeks in advance, not even 2 weeks in advance, and not even the beginning of show week. It's their process to hold on to it and to keep refining it until the last minute. This is what happens with most comedy on television. It happens with Saturday Night Live. They don't have a complete script on Monday. Things are being weighed and they don't put their final show together until after their dress rehearsal. So that last minute move, which is part of making comedy work, it's sometimes tough for a producer to help have the network understand that that's the way the process works. It's not like doing, Homeland or Game of Thrones or whatever, where there's scripts way ahead of time, written way ahead of time, and you can really get into them and understand what's going to happen. There's an element of trust with comics. And that's the toughest thing in dealing with, getting shows done.
Well, and if you've got somebody good as host and they've got a good writing team, even if you have that script as the show starts, you're going to adjust and make things up as events happen on the show, right?
Can you ask me that question again? Unfortunately, I didn't turn my phone off, Chris.
No, that's okay. I was saying, even if you've got a great script, as the show begins, as events happen during the show, if you've got a good writing team and a good host, they're adjusting and adding new material along the way.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. The host has got his own area. Generally, it's stage right. And they have their team of writers in there, and they work constantly. And there's many times there's flexibility and kind of what I would call an audible called in the middle of the show. They have a prompter unit sitting in there with them. And as they're making changes, they come to us as producers at our table, and then they go into the system. And we just go with it. And that's part of the fun of live television. You're able to respond to what's going on, to an unusual acceptance speech, to an unpredictable win. And that's part of what makes live television and award shows in general, more interesting and more fun to watch.
You've produced so many Emmy Awards. You've won 15 of them. Was there a particular, not of your wins, we already talked about that, but was there a particular moment on an Emmy Award show that really stands out to you?
Wow, that's hard. What stands out are the moments that you can't produce. The moments where, like Julia Dreyfus, upon winning, or when Bryan Cranston won a couple of years ago, she went over on his way up and just planted a big kiss right on his lips. That was not produced, okay? There have been times in which, like supporting actress in a comedy, Amy Poehler would get together with Tina Fey and people like that, and they would decide to put glasses on that had mustaches or unusual eyebrows or whatever. We had no idea that was coming. Sometimes you can overproduce these things. Sometimes they can actually become too smooth. And I love the feeling of a live show and an award show where there's a little bit of a sense that the show has its own momentum, that the producers have kind of lost a little bit of control of the show, and it's kind of running around and getting wild. Now that's an overstatement, but having that kind of feeling, not having everything perfect, every shot perfect, you know, when a winner is on his way to the stage and decides to detour and run around the corner and kiss. Hold on, I got to turn my phone on.
That's okay.
Anyway,
I should have produced this a little better.
It's better than anything you could produce. You know, it really is. And you know, so you kind of hope for those unexpected things to happen. And yeah, you worry about it a little bit more. It stresses you out a little bit more, but it also adds excitement to the show. And people kind of can tell when things are produced and when they just happen.
What about you when a show is over and it's been a good one? What's that feeling like for you? How long after the show when you can really relax and celebrate?
Well, every show that we finish that comes out okay, I always feel like we kind of dodged a bullet. I'm sure that I'm just overly dramatic or melodramatic about that, but you know, you worry about things that can go wrong so much. I mean, you know, you just worry, and it's not illogical. You worry about earthquakes. You worry about power outages. You worry about lights falling down and hitting somebody. You worry about, you know, people stumbling on their way up the stage, like Jennifer Lawrence did the last time I was directing the Oscars when she won, I think, for Silver Linings Playbook. And so your mind is always trying to anticipate what can go wrong. So the first thing is, when the show's over, is we survived and we did okay. You know, and it's normally a very euphoric feeling. I think that those of us who love live television and work a lot in live television, there is an adrenaline rush that is somewhat addictive. I've often thought about how, you know, Hurt Locker and American Sniper and these guys that deal with high adrenaline in their careers, you know, it's hard for somebody who dealt with that kind of adrenaline in combat to come home for a week, and not for a week, but to come home and go bowling every Tuesday night and have a barbecue with their neighbors on the weekend. They get kind of addicted to the urgency with which they are dealing with situations when they're, you know, in the field or in combat or whatever. And I'm not comparing us to soldiers at all, but there is an adrenaline rush that you get when you have succeeded with something that's this important, that's watched by this many people, that involves all these people pulling together. And it's almost like you're running an army and running an invasion that has actually worked. And, you know, we all know that there'll be times in which it won't work, but it kind of helps you. You know, the adrenaline rush is something that I think is addictive and kind of, you know, we've been called stress junkies, and that's probably a fairly accurate description of what we do. The trouble is, we love it. We love it.
Well, it shows, and you are personally my favorite special event producer, and have been I've been watching your work, I guess, for 35 years or more, and
Thank you.
I'm hoping to hear your name announced like as the next Emmy producer and the next Oscar producer or the next Kennedy Center producer. I just, whenever I see that you're announced as that, I always know we're in good hands.
All right. Well, thank you. It's great talking with you.
Thank you very much.
All right.